As best any of us can. I've been talking about violence that is coming on September 3rd, November 3rd or November 4th. It is coming, and I hope that you are aware of that. And no matter what your thoughts may be about what you hear on this podcast, I hope you'll take that part of what I talk about seriously. Violence is on the way. Now, it could be sporadic. It could be in various pockets across the country. It could be a general breakdown and chaos, a breakdown of law and order. Trump has been pushing the country towards this since before he was president. Rush Limbaugh has been pushing the country towards this. All the little evil bastards on the Fox sewer have been pushing the country towards this. Every neo-fascist right-wing website has been pushing the country toward this. It is going to happen. Please accept that as truth. Now, how you react to it is up to you. How I react to it is up to me. But you have to be prepared. Now, the reason I brought this up first, there are several things I want to try to get to today or tonight. I don't know if we're going to have time. We will have time with our post Progressive Voices podcast when we address just the subscribers, which you may want to be if you're not. Just go to MikeMalloy.com and it'll show you how to become a subscriber. It's about the cheapest thing you'll ever purchase. Trust me. Anyway, I was reading in the current issue of the New Yorker magazine, the September 14th issue, a piece by Jelani Cobb about what it parallels what I've been talking about for some time now, about the violence that is coming toward us, that Trump is promoting, encouraging, advocating, and that his brain-dead fascist followers are all too willing to engage in. This is where you and I and millions of us who cannot stand what these son of a bitches have planned, this is where you and I have got to be prepared to defend, protect the Constitution of the United States from enemies foreign and very domestic. Now, the ape has been initiating dangerous lawlessness all over the country for the past 4 years. But Jelani Cobb points something out in this piece he wrote. Killing and destruction linked to political antagonisms are nothing new for this country. I want to share this with you. You might call this Uncle Mike's Story Corner. But it's written by Jelani Cobb in the current issue of The New Yorker. He writes, in the fall of 1856, according to news reports, a Baltimore resident named Charles Brown was, quote, peaceably walking along the street, end quote, when he was shot dead. It was a local election day, and Brown was in the vicinity of a 12th Ward polling place. Democrats attempting to enter it had been repelled by supporters of the American Party, better known as the Know-Nothings. For some 2 hours, the groups exchanged gunfire in what the Baltimore American newspaper described as, quote, guerrilla warfare, end quote. Brown was one of 5 people killed, and the newspaper marveled that more lives were not lost. This was not an uncommon event. The American Party, a group defined by its truculent nativism, frequently deployed violence to political ends, particularly against immigrant voters. As Richard Hofstadter and Michael Wallace, in their book, American Violence, A Documentary History, wrote of Baltimore at the time, quote, in many districts, immigrants were stopped from voting entirely, end quote. Now, let me pause for a second from Jelani Cobb's piece. He's talking in the book, Richard Hofstadter and Michael Wallace are talking about immigrants who had become American citizens, just so we're clear on that. Anyway, back to Jelani. He writes, the United States is considered one of the most stable democracies in the world, but it has a long, mostly forgotten history of election-related violence. In 1834, during clashes between the Whigs and Democrats in Philadelphia, an entire city block was burned to the ground. In 1874, more than 5,000 men fought in the streets of New Orleans in a battle between supporters of Louisiana's Republican Governor William Kellogg and of the White League, a group allied with the Democrats. And the nation's record of overlooking the violent prevention of black suffrage is much longer than its record of protecting black voters. The general public tends to view such calamities as a static record of the past. But historians tend to look at them the way that meteorologists look at hurricanes. In other words, as a predictable outcome when a number of recognizable variables align in familiar ways. In the aftermath of events in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and Portland, Oregon, we are in hurricane season. Following the release on August 23rd of a video showing Officer Rustin Shesky shooting Jacob Blake, an unarmed 29-year-old black man, 7 times in the back, protesters poured into the streets of Kenosha. Some of them engaged in looting. And 2 nights later, Kyle Rittenhouse, a 17-year-old with an AR-15 style rifle, reportedly crossed state lines from Illinois to defend property in Kenosha. According to prosecutors, he shot 3 protesters, 2 of them fatally. Several nights later, a caravan of Trump supporters drove through downtown Portland, where anti-police brutality protesters have been gathering for months, and they fired paintballs and pepper spray into the crowd. Aaron Danielson, a supporter of the right-wing group Patriot Prayer, was shot dead. The suspect, Michael Reinhold, an Antifa supporter, was fatally shot by law enforcement officers last Thursday as they attempted to apprehend him south of Seattle. Throughout these horrendous developments, Donald Trump has been at cross purposes with the calling of his office. He has sown conflict where none existed and exacerbated it where it did. On a visit to Kenosha, Trump did not mention Blake, who has been left partially paralyzed. But he said that Rittenhouse, who has been charged with homicide, was likely acting in self-defense, claiming, without offering any evidence, as is Trump's habit, that Rittenhouse, quote, probably would have been killed by protesters, end quote. In 2013, when President Obama spoke about Trayvon Martin, an unarmed black 17-year-old who was shot to death in Sanford, Florida, Obama addressed racism, but not the particulars of the case, so as not to interfere with legal proceedings. Republicans were nevertheless quick to accuse Obama of impropriety. 7 years later, Republican Party leaders have made no such complaints about Trump's advocating for Rittenhouse. The Trump presidency has been an escalating series of insults, each enabling greater violations of norms, ethics, and laws. That pattern now seems poised to upend democracy itself. It began even before Trump took office, when he refused to release his tax returns, claiming that his Democratic opponent, Hillary Clinton, should be in jail, openly enlisting a foreign adversary to help achieve that end. This year, he has removed 5 inspectors general from their posts, and with the assistance of Attorney General William Barr, corrupted the Department of Justice to such a degree that we are now unsure of the legal meaning of the word guilty when applied to Trump-connected defendants. The likelihood of political violence was also apparent from the start. Trump's 2016 rallies tipped over into displays of aggression directed at the media and at those who opposed him. Such is the chaos of today that we've nearly forgotten that 2 years ago, Cesar Sayoc mailed pipe bombs to Obama, Hillary Clinton, and 14 others he believed had treated Trump unfairly. Sayoc pleaded guilty. His lawyers described him as, quote, a Donald Trump superfan who suffered from mental illness, end quote, which left him vulnerable to the antagonisms of the political climate. The 21-year-old Patrick Crusius was charged with fatally shooting 23 people in El Paso last year. The language of an anti-immigrant manifesto he allegedly posted before the shooting was noted for its echoes of Trump's rationalizations for building his border wall. Crusius pleaded not guilty. Now, this May, the Michigan legislature temporarily shut down after armed militia members entered the Capitol to protest the state's stay-at-home order. A couple of weeks earlier, Trump had tweeted, "Liberate Michigan!" The Transition Integrity Project, a nonpartisan group of academics, journalists, and current and former government and party officials, recently released a report outlining a number of election scenarios that are both plausible and terrifying. Trump has primed his followers with repeated warnings of voter fraud, so there's a real possibility that they may denounce as illegitimate any outcome in which he loses. Beyond that, the report suggests the administration could seize mail-in ballots in order to prevent them from being counted, or pressure Republican-controlled legislatures to certify results before all mail-in ballots have arrived. The authors of this report conclude that, quote, voting fraud is virtually non-existent, but Trump lies about it to create a narrative designed to politically mobilize his base and to create the basis for contesting the results should he lose. The potential for violent conflict is high, particularly since Trump encourages his supporters to take up arms, end quote, from the Transition Integrity Project. Jelani Cobb closes with this. This is where we are, at the perilous logical extension of all that Trump represents. A weather forecast is not a prediction of the inevitable. We are not doomed to witness a catastrophic tempest this fall, but anyone who is paying attention knows that the winds have begun to pick up. Jelani Cobb, writing in the current issue of the New Yorker magazine, the September 14th issue. It's just astonishing to me what this filthy, filthy man, this orange ape, has done, is doing. And what so many in right-wing media, neo-fascist media, have been promoting for the past 30 years, 35 years, starting with the pig man, Limbaugh. We're in a very, very bad situation. There's no way to sugarcoat the words. And other than one or two incidents in recent American history, I am not a conspiracy theorist. I mean, I can see bullshit when it's bullshit, just like you can. I don't need some crazy-ass right-wing website to tell me, QAnon, we're trying to stop an international pedophile ring. Screw all that. And like I say, other than a couple of events that have been catastrophic for this country, I don't subscribe to so-called conspiracy theories ever. And that's because the reality of what I see, what you see, what I experience, what you experience is conspiratorial enough. It doesn't require some half-assed theories coming from this jerkwater websites or Sean Hannity's burbly little mouth or Limbaugh's approaching death, raging and screaming. The obvious is all we need to look at. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. You have your choice. You can listen to The Ranting with the audio podcast, or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.